The National Desk, America's News Now.
Weather warnings, almost 60% of the country in the path of severe weather for the next 2 days, where it's worst and what you can expect in your area.
It's clearly not in the interest of anyone. Israel, Lebanon, Hezbollah, for that matter, to see this escalate.
Tensions rise as another senior commander is killed. Can the United States prevent an all-out war in the region? And shocking comments by Pope Francis as he comes down hard against what he calls a deplorable action, but others call a necessity for family. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Breaking news out of Fort Worth, Texas. We are getting word right now of a significant gas explosion at the Sandman Signature Hotel downtown. Emergency responders now calling this a mass casualty event. We will continue to follow this. We're going to bring you all the latest developments both here on air and online at thenationaldesk.com. So stick with us there. And a powerful winter storm moving across the country with more than 40 states right now under alerts for blizzards, wind, snow, or floods impacting more than 200 million Americans. CNN reports the system will cover over 1,800 miles, bringing significant snow to over a half a dozen states by tomorrow. Blizzard conditions forecast today for 9 states in the West and the Plains. Tornadoes and flooding all possible along the Gulf Coast, and by tomorrow that risk will move up the East Coast. Also tomorrow, heavy rain and melting snow could lead to flooding from Virginia to Maine. And breaking news right now, United Airlines just announced they found bolts in need of tightening, among other installation issues during their inspection of the Boeing 737 MAX 9 after the door plug fell from an Alaska Airlines plane on Friday. The FAA has grounded all 737 MAX planes while the investigations continue. Alaska Airlines and United Airlines, the only airlines that use these planes, have canceled more than 600 flights between the two of them today. And that missing piece that blew off an Alaska Airlines plane mid-flight, that has been found. The National Transportation Safety Board chair says a Portland, Oregon school teacher found the door plug in his backyard. The plane was headed from Portland to Ontario, California, when the piece came off on a flight on Friday. The National Desk's Lee Stahl has more on the NTSB's investigation and the aftermath of this near tragedy.
New pictures from the NTSB show investigators looking at the gaping hole where a door plug fell off an Alaska 737 MAX 9 heading from Portland to Ontario, California. The plane was at 16,000 feet and made an emergency landing in Portland with no injuries. The door was found in the backyard of a Portland area teacher.
But we're going to go pick that up and make sure that we begin analyzing it.
The crew reported hearing a loud bang before the cabin depressurized. We've learned several warning lights had previously gone off, and the plane was not allowed to fly any routes over water. The cockpit voice recorder was also inadvertently taped over. The FAA ordered U.S. carriers to ground 171 737 MAX 9 planes for inspections. This weekend, Alaska tweeted 18 of their 65 jets were cleared to fly again, but as of Sunday, those planes were still grounded by the FAA.
I think that they need to take more precautions in making sure that flyers are safe, just checking everything out first. And I am glad to see that they have taken a lot of those planes off.
In December, Boeing asked airlines to inspect all 737 MAX airplanes for possible loose or missing parts in the rudder control system connected to 2 incidents. In 2019, the FAA grounded the Boeing 737 MAX fleet after 2 deadly crashes.
What's incredible is we're learning no one was sitting in the 2 seats right next to where this door plug blew off the plane. That is one big reason no one was seriously hurt.
Well, Secretary of State Antony Blinken back in Israel tonight as his 4th trip continues in the region where war broke out on October 7th. Earlier today, he met with Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman after meeting with the Qatari Prime Minister yesterday. The week-long mission has been about keeping the war in Gaza isolated and not expanding further, as well as decreasing the casualties for civilians in the war-torn enclave, as he stressed again today.
I will press on the absolute imperative to do more to protect civilians and to do more to make sure that humanitarian assistance is getting into the hands of those who need it.
The Hamas-run Gaza Ministry of Health updating their death totals today to more than 23,000 people, with just under 59,000 injured. If accurate, this would equal about 1 person killed per 100 people in Gaza and 1 in 40 injured in some capacity. The IDF says it has completed the dismantling of Hamas's military framework in northern Gaza, shifting that portion of the war to special operations. Israel says it will continue with its high-intensity combat in central and southern Gaza as they search for the remaining hostages and Hamas leaders. A top Hezbollah commander was killed in an Israeli airstrike in southern Lebanon, and Israel's military also says it killed a Hamas militant in Syria responsible for firing rockets toward Israel. National correspondent Atrel Nashar has the latest on the escalation.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visiting IDF troops Monday near the border of Israel and Lebanon, where a second front of the war could be forming. Netanyahu tells his troops Hezbollah is underestimating them, shortly after an Israeli strike in Lebanon killed Hezbollah commander Wissam Tawil. Many viewing it as an escalation of what's been constant skirmishes between Israel and Hezbollah since the October 7th Hamas attacks.
Hezbollah is dragging Lebanon into an unnecessary war for the sake of Hamas.
Last week, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah said their attacks against Israel are intended to, quote, stop the assault on Gaza.
This is a moment of profound tension in the region.
In his fourth visit to the Middle East since October 7th, Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the conflict could easily metastasize.
This is not just a regional issue. It's a matter of global concern.
The region further destabilized by Iran's vow to retaliate for deadly twin bombings last week, for which ISIS has claimed responsibility. Blinken calling out Houthi attacks on commercial ships in the Red Sea, which the Iran-backed rebel group says are to counter Israel's attacks on Palestinians. According to the Hamas-run Ministry of Health in Gaza, more than 23,000 people have been killed since October 7th. Calls for a ceasefire interrupting President Biden's speech at Mother Emanuel AME Church in South Carolina Monday.
I've been quietly working with the Israeli government to get them to reduce and significantly get out of Gaza.
Now, we've heard members of the Biden administration call for more to be done to protect civilians in Gaza before, but that comment you just heard from the president is by far the most direct signal that we've seen so far, indicating he's frustrated with Israel's operations.
Certainly a shift in tone here. And Secretary of State Blinken, he gave a preview of his upcoming talks in Israel. What do we know? What should we expect?
Right. You heard some sound from the secretary really focusing on humanitarian aid actually getting to Gazans and also to just prevent more civilian deaths. Like you said, the death toll, more than 23,000. But the question is, because we've heard the administration say those things since the outset of Israel's offensive, the question, I think, is at what point, or is there a point that the administration will say that U.S. aid or support for Israel in its war against Hamas is conditioned on those things being upheld?
We will have to wait and see. Atrel Nashar, thank you for that reporting. And this just in, the 911 transcripts of the deadly October shooting in Lewiston, Maine, those transcripts now public, showing people in the town had been aware that the gunman, Robert Card's mental health was getting worse. That backs up previous descriptions of the shooter from police and from the military. 18 people were killed in that shooting, 13 hurt on October 25th. Donald Trump's lawyers, they now say presidential immunity protects him from the criminal lawsuit he is facing in Georgia. Today's filing now asking for the case to be dismissed. Trump faces multiple election subversion charges in the state. It is a similar claim that will be heard tomorrow in the District of Columbia U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in the federal election subversion case. And Trump is expected to attend. If he isn't granted this immunity, Trump suggested he could seek to indict Joe Biden sometime next year. In a post on his Truth Social, Trump issued a warning to President Biden, in part writing, "If I don't get immunity, then crooked Joe Biden doesn't get immunity." The former president has not been shy about implying he would go after political opponents who have come after him if he becomes president again. The man who was recorded attacking a Las Vegas judge in the courtroom now faces prison time in an unrelated case. Deobra Redden could serve up to 4 years for a baseball bat attack that happened last year. Redden leapt over the bench at District Court Judge Mary Kay Holthus last week after claiming he was no longer a violent threat. The judge, a clerk, and a marshal were hurt in that incident. Redden now expected to appear on charges related to that attack tomorrow. Flavored cigarettes still cannot be sold in California after the Supreme Court declined to hear a challenge to a state law this morning. Tobacco companies had argued states cannot ban certain products under the Federal Tobacco Control Act. The justices did not comment on the matter today. The Supreme Court also declined to hear a challenge regarding the Pebble mine project. It was going to be a major copper, gold, and molybdenum mine, but the EPA put a stop to it. Alaska challenged this decision and tried to get the Supreme Court to hear it without going through the lower courts. The justices did not comment. Opening statements in the trial against some National Rifle Association leaders started today. New York's Attorney General suing several NRA executives, accusing them of illegally taking tens of millions of dollars from the organization. The AG says that included gifts, expensive trips, and consulting contracts for ex-employees. One of the executives, CEO Wayne LaPierre, resigned last week in connection to similar charges. And coming up, how White House officials are responding after the Defense Department failed to inform them that the Defense Secretary Austin, why he was in the hospital, and then a new survey showing a stark increase in the number of Americans carrying credit card debt, the main reason they are struggling to pay it off. Plus, the latest NFL teams to fire their head coaches when we come back in just 90 seconds. Congressional negotiators have agreed on a budget number that will keep the government funded before the deadline of January 19th. This agreement keeps the spending levels the same as negotiated by then Speaker McCarthy and President Biden over the summer. Many House Republicans expressed disappointment with that deal in June, and there could be votes against it now. Senator Schumer warning those who may be opposed to that they will be blamed for what would come next.
If the hard right chooses to spoil this agreement with poison pills, they'll be to blame if we start careening towards a shutdown.
Dr. Anthony Fauci was on Capitol Hill today for the first of 2 days of closed-door testimony before the House Select Subcommittee investigating the COVID-19 pandemic. The committee now investigating the origins of the virus, censorship of scientific counter theories, and the government's overall handling of the pandemic. A public hearing will be scheduled at a later date. And the House Oversight Committee officially released their resolution calling for contempt of Congress charges against Hunter Biden for his, quote, flagrant defiance of the committee's deposition subpoenas. The resolution will be voted on by the committee on Wednesday. If it passes as is expected, the resolution will come to the House floor for consideration. White House officials say Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin will keep his job after a communication breakdown where the Pentagon failed to tell the White House that Austin was in the hospital. Here's national correspondent Kayla Gaskins.
For days, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was hospitalized at Walter Reed, handing power to his second in command. And no one told the president.
The handling of this by the Secretary of Defense is totally unacceptable.
It's a communication breakdown with serious national security implications. And it came at a time when two close U.S. allies, Israel and Ukraine, are at war. The defense secretary is second in command only to the president when it comes to making military decisions.
When you're the Secretary of Defense, you need to make everyone aware that you're actually going to be out of pocket. Apparently, the National Security Council didn't know it. The White House didn't know it. Congress didn't know it. We're at a time of a lot of turmoil internationally.
In a Truth Social post, former President Donald Trump said Austin should be fired for dereliction of duty. Austin was admitted to Walter Reed Monday, January 1st, for complications following an elective surgery. On Tuesday, he transferred power to his deputy, Kathleen Hicks, who was on vacation in Puerto Rico. Multiple sources say Hicks wasn't aware of why she was given control. On Thursday, the Pentagon finally told the White House the defense secretary was out of commission. Congress wasn't informed until Friday, just hours before the Pentagon released a statement to the public.
I do hope that every person in the cabinet recognizes that this was not an appropriate step, not an appropriate way to handle what was his hospitalization.
Virginia Democratic Representative Abigail Spanberger said once the secretary is fully recovered, Congress deserves answers.
Hopefully there will be greater transparency, at least within the administration.
In a statement Saturday, Austin took full responsibility for the decisions about disclosing his condition. The 70-year-old has resumed full authority.
The Democrat and Republican leaders of the House Armed Services Committee releasing a joint statement calling for concrete consequences for how the situation was handled. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Kayla, thank you. A new Bankrate survey finds 49% of people with credit cards are carrying a balance from month to month. That's up 10 percentage points from where we were in 2021. Most of those people have been in debt for at least a year. The survey found the top reason for carrying the debt was emergency or unexpected expenses.
The truth is under assault in America. As a consequence, so is our freedom, our democracy, our very country, because without the truth, there's no light. Without light, there's no path from this darkness.
And that was President Biden making a campaign pitch today at the Mother Emanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina. The visit comes almost 9 years after 9 people were tragically killed in a shooting at the historically black church. Biden called white supremacy a poison with no place in this country. The South Carolina Democratic primary is on February 3rd. Christian Ziegler is out as chairman of Florida's Republican Party after members voted to remove him today. The party suspended Ziegler last month over rape allegations and called for him to resign, but he refused. A woman said Ziegler raped her at her home in October after his wife backed out of a planned sexual threesome. Ziegler denies the claims. Former Vice Chairman Evan Power now replacing Ziegler. And Pope Francis, he is calling for a universal ban on surrogate motherhood. He called the practice, quote, deplorable and, quote, a commercialization of pregnancy. Commercial surrogacy contracts are common in the U.S. Critics say the practice targets poor and vulnerable women. Supporters say it allows couples the opportunity for biological children, with contracts protecting the surrogate and the parents. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhood covering the issues that matter to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
I'm really healthier than I've been in many years.
Dr. Linda Toussé has been on Ozempic for the last 3 years to help manage her diabetes. She says it's been great because one of the side effects is losing weight.
I have lost 25 pounds, and I am one of these people who is very resistant to losing weight.
But she says it feels like it is still a challenge getting Ozempic for a few reasons. More patients requesting it for weight loss.
If I didn't have a good relationship with my pharmacist there at HEB, I would have been on a waiting list sometimes with, trying to get the drug.
She's also struggled with the cost. She's over 65 and on Medicare.
I have the highest level of all kinds of Medicare assistance, Part A, B, D, and G, and it's still $275 a month.
A new development in California in a case involving a student's gender identity. Aurora Regino sued the Chico Unified School District last year, claiming they pushed her then 11-year-old daughter into socially transitioning into a boy and kept the new gender identity a secret. A judge dismissed that lawsuit, but Regino is appealing to the Ninth Circuit Court. The district now says the courts were correct in the initial decision because parents do not hold an ultimate decision-maker role when it comes to issues that impact their child's privacy. A lawyer for Regino says he's confident the appeals court will agree with them.
These attempts to reframe this as outing transgender kids and being anti-LGBTQ are just completely ridiculous, inaccurate, and don't really reflect what it is we're trying to achieve here.
We don't need roads.
It's a new year, which means new car technology. And in 2024, where we're going, we won't need credit cards.
You just simply drive through and you're paid up.
Ed Kim, the president of Auto Pacific, an automotive market and research consulting firm,
55 burgers, 55 fries, 55 tacos.
Says this year car companies could start putting technology similar to Apple Pay in their cars. At the drive-thru, you can buy your food almost automatically.
You don't even have to pull out your phone or, your watch.
In the NFL, Ron Rivera out as the Washington Commanders head football coach after 4 seasons with the club. He did did win one division title, but didn't record one winning season in D.C. The Atlanta Falcons, they didn't wait until today, firing Arthur Smith after 3 seasons and no playoff appearances after their game ended yesterday. The Raiders, Panthers, and Chargers are also in a head coach search mode after those teams fired their coaches midseason. And tonight, number 1 Michigan meets number 2 Washington for the title in the college football playoff championship game in Houston. Both teams are 14-0. The key matchup pits Washington quarterback Michael Penix Jr. against Michigan's dominant defense. The Heisman Trophy runner-up is the nation's leading passer for the 2nd straight year. The National Desk's Nico Tamurian talks to fans at NRG Stadium.
Welcome inside NRG Stadium, home of the national championship, and this is something Dogs fans have been waiting a generation to see. If UW can get their first solo national title. So this is the scene inside right now, of course, on their way in. Fans telling us that this is something they've waited, in some cases, their entire lives to see. If UW can pull off the mythical title tonight. Go Dogs! This is it.
Huskies! It's amazing. Yeah. Like, we've been waiting for this since I was 11. Now he's 13 here at the game. Since 91. I mean, that's amazing.
A chance at history, a chance at a once-in-a-generation achievement.
I remember 91. I remember it was a co-championship. There wasn't a championship game, so I had to bring this guy, and my partner had to bring his son as well.
So it's the Dogs in Michigan ready to line it up.
It is so cool. The heart attack Huskies, right? Like, they really make you work for it. You're there till the last second, like, screaming at the top of your lungs, just watching Penix just drop dimes. It's magical out there, yeah.
Huskies, let's go! And these fans are ready to root for purple and gold and purple rain all the way to the championship.
You just know that they believe in each other, that they're going to approach this game knowing that they're going to give it their best.
Go Dogs! Let's go! Let's go!
Can't wait to see it. Coming up, a U.S. Lunar Lander traveling to the moon for the first time in more than 50 years, but the landing could be in jeopardy. The company trying to send a U.S. lunar lander to the moon might change its original plan of trying to land it on the moon February 23rd. Around 7 hours after ULA's Vulcan rocket took off from Florida's Cape Canaveral space station this morning, Astrobotic Technology said the solar panel was not correctly pointed towards the sun. It fixed that issue, but then said there was a propulsion system failure. Let's just hope they can get it together. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. Thank you so much for watching.